Good morning and welcome to the Peorian. I'm your host, Paul Gordon. Someone told me recently that the general rule of thumb holds that a child is safest when at school or in his or her own home. We know, of course, that there are exceptions to every rule. We've seen it at schools across the nation the last few years, with Columbine the best known exception. And then we saw it up close in Peoria last summer, when 8-year-old Albert Billups Wilson was shot and killed while sleeping in his bed on the city's south side, the victim of a drive-by shooting. Young Albert's killers have not yet been captured. That incident, however, resulted in the formation of a task force that will target the most violent criminals in the city and will, in the words of Mayor Jim Ardis, place a laser-like focus in a coordinated effort to drastically reduce gun crimes in our city. Now, this isn't pie-in-the-sky thinking. Rather, this initiative will be based on a program proven to be effective in other cities across the nation, including parts of Chicago and as close as Rockford. It is being brought to the city by the U.S. Department of Justice and will be modeled after programs detailed in the book Don't Shoot by David M. Kennedy, who was instrumental in creating these programs. Mayor Ardis is my guest today, and we will discuss that project after these messages. Welcome back to the Peorian. My guest today is Peoria Mayor Jim Ardis. Thank you for joining us, Jim. We're talking today about an anti-violence project that you brought up during your State of the City address that you want to get started here in Peoria. And it's modeled after some of the projects in this book, Don't Shoot, by David M. Kennedy. Does the local project have a formal name yet?
It doesn't yet, Paul. We're still working with the media partners and the other people in the community that are going to help us with this, and they haven't put an official name on it yet. So right now we're calling it Don't Shoot until it does get an official name.
Have you got a time frame on launching it?
Well, we're hoping that probably end of March, first part of April, when spring gets here.
How was it first brought to Peoria, to you?
Well, Tate Chambers, who's one of our local U.S. attorneys, spent a significant amount of time out of the Department of Justice over the last 2 or 3 years. And he saw this program and a lot of other programs that the Department of Justice runs throughout the country. Because of the focus that the Don't Shoot emphasizes gun crime, and the rising number of gun crimes in Peoria, he thought there'd be a good match there, and he brought this to us for consideration.
During your State of the City address, you mentioned the tragic drive-by shooting that took the life of 8-year-old Albert Billups. Was that also one of the things that drove this? It
was. That was just another one of the really senseless, gun crimes that happened last year. But you don't take any of them lightly, and you hear of more incidents of crimes that involve guns. But when you have a young person like Albert that was a victim in a terrible situation, I think it just puts more weight on it. But on the law enforcement side, as they continue to try to determine who actually fired the gun that killed him, there was a lot of things that became evident to the police department, that there were some of the players involved with that are some pretty hardcore people that are involved in a number of illegal activities in the community, and I think that's definitely put weight for not only local law enforcement but other agencies to look at some of these people that are frankly terrorizing parts of our city.
Well, in his book, Kennedy talked about the revelation, to him at least, that much of the gun violence and murders of young people in the country was gang-related, has been gang-related. Are you finding that here as well?
We do have gangs per se in Peoria. They aren't. Our law enforcement officials will tell you that they're not at the level of complexity and organization as you're going to see in bigger, Chicago's and Detroit's and Indianapolis and so on. But there is a semblance of gang activity here, and there is a strong correlation between gangs and guns.
What about the drug trade? Is that part of it here as well, or?
It is part of the drug trade too, and really what you see is a lot of these people, and frankly, a lot of them are kids,
yeah.
Are using guns not just as a way to commit their crimes, but also as a way to command respect and in their minds, and also to protect themselves.
Where are they getting the guns?
Well, a lot of them are from burglaries. There's a lot of gun trafficking out there, not necessarily in the Peoria area, but with our location between Chicago and St. Louis, close to Indianapolis, and I think that there's the police will be able to tell us that there's a lot of gun trafficking going on. A whole nother side show could probably discuss the effectiveness of gun registrations and so on, because good law-abiding citizens who have the right to own weapons register their guns. Criminals don't register them, so most of them are stolen, and registering or finding more stringent ways to regulate guns isn't really having any type of an impact on the ability of criminals to access them.
Also in his book, Kennedy talked about analyzing where most of the violence occurs as a way of focusing in. Chief Settings Guard had already done that, hadn't he? At least to a point of finding out where most of the violence is occurring?
We do have some strategic mapping software that the police department uses to identify specific locations, and they can use that data to really analyze specific areas of the city and see if they can see any patterns developing and so on. So there is good use of that type of software by our police departments, but this really is a whole different element.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk about what kind of reception the project is receiving in the community. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Peorian. I'm with Peoria Mayor Jim Ardis. We're talking about a project that the mayor wants to start this spring to try to control gun violence in Peoria. Now, the program is going to be based largely on this book by David M. Kennedy called Don't Shoot. And in this book, Kennedy talked about resistance that he faced in some of the cities he went into, from police and politicians both. Quote, "I know we can control the bad guys. I don't know how to control the good guys," end of quote. Are you finding any resistance here at all so far?
So far, the people that we've spoken with in the community, and we're still working through some of the final details, is there's been a large willingness on people to engage in this. We haven't felt a lot of resistance so far.
Who have you gone to with it?
Well, we've, in addition to the law enforcement people, we've talked with a number of people in the news media, both the TV side and the print side, as well as some of our friends at the library. Most of us know that every year they have a Peoria Reads opportunity, and for a number of reasons, a lot of it to do with funding, some of it to do with the fact that a lot of the libraries have been under construction. They have other things going on. This was potentially going to be a year that they weren't going to do a Peoria Reads. So when I contacted them about helping us with the logistics of how they worked that program, they let us know that they hadn't planned on doing one, but this very well may more or less fill in the void, and they may be able to use this as their use the Don't Shoot book as their Peoria Read subject for the year, unofficially, but be able to help us incorporate that in ways that they know very well how to do because they've been doing it for so long.
When you say police agencies, law enforcement agencies, can you tell me who they are? Some of those are.
Well, it's like the chief mentioned at the State of the City. It's the local city, county, and they also have federal agencies involved, FBI and ATF, and a couple others.
When they all buy into something like this, who's in charge? Will there be a turf war, or?
I don't think that there's going to be a turf war. I think clearly that the federal guys are the ones that have the program,
Okay.
and everybody is committed to a specific number of folks involved, manpower-wise, and they have a corresponding budget that goes with that. But everybody is, I think everybody acknowledges what the focus is and what the goals are, and they'll be working as a team. I don't think we're going to have a problem with someone saying who's driving.
At your request, Chief Settings Guard and Sheriff McCoy already were working together. Isn't that correct? Working together to what? What were their efforts working together to try to find some common ground?
Well, not really related to this specific project.
Not to this project,
yeah,
yes.
We last year, at the beginning of the year, when I had discussed a lot of discussions that I felt needed to be happened at different governmental units and eliminating some of the duplications the taxpayers are seeing, I had let everyone know that I had talked to both the police chief and the sheriff about looking at some point in the future consolidating the two police departments and having them look at strategies to actually get to that point. And several, there's a lot of logistics involved. I mean, you're talking two different unions, two different pensions, really two different police forces. The county has a significant number on the correction side because the sheriff runs the jail too.
Right.
The unincorporated part of Peoria County doesn't see exactly the same type of crimes and so on as the city guys do. But that's just, that's working through that kind of stuff. But really just having them talk to peers and other communities that have consolidated a city and a county police force and getting to a point where we could potentially do that. Not just for efficiency, but also for savings to the taxpayers.
When you say community involvement, will you enlist the help of Carl Cannon and his program and similar type programs?
Yeah, we've talked to Carl. We've talked to a number of people in the faith-based community as well. Okay. The more, and really that's a huge advantage for us getting on your show before this comes about too. I mean, this is going to be something where we really want to engage as many people in the community to participate.
Okay. We're going to take a break now for messages from our sponsors, but first here is Kevin Kaiser to talk about what's going on in the literary and culinary world.
Hey, welcome to my segment where I talk about whatever I want to for 2 minutes or so. Today it's writers who've made appearances in films. This is something we talked about before. Film adaptations of novels have been with us basically since the beginning of film time. And while it's not unusual for a great writer to have his or her work appear on screen, it is somewhat unusual for a great writer to appear on screen themselves, whether it be an adaptation of their own work or just for novelty's sake. First off, Marshall McLuhan as himself in Annie Hall by Woody Allen. Oh, you know what that means? Skrillex! Okay, McLuhan appears as himself to support Woody Allen's assertion that the gentleman behind him in line who's talking about McLuhan doesn't actually know anything about McLuhan at all. Second, adorable drunken hobo poet Charles Bukowski appears as an adorable drunken hobo in Barfly, starring Mickey Rourke and Faye Dunaway. Actually, he's just an extra, a patron in one of the bars the main characters frequent, and might be missed if you're not paying close attention. Third, Hunter S. Thompson as himself from the past in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. In the film, the fictional Hunter S. Thompson meets the real Hunter S. Thompson in a flashback to the San Francisco scene he was a part of in the 60s. Fourth, William S. Burroughs is Father Murphy in Drugstore Cowboy, starring Matt Dillon. Burroughs has a pretty big role in this movie, playing a creepy junkie priest who provides Dillon with some fatherly advice. There's something about his creaky, hip way of delivering lines that's almost hypnotic. Now, those are some of the more well-known appearances, but there are lots of others, including Norman Mailer as Stanford White in Ragtime, which is not as famous as the video of him fighting in a field with a young Rip Torn. YouTube it, my friends, it's well worth it. There's also Arthur C. Clarke as a man on a park bench in 2010, the year we make contact, Essie Hinton as a nurse in The Outsiders, and Stephanie Meyer as an extra eating at a diner in Twilight. So there you go, writers who've made appearances in films. This concludes my segment for this week. You are now released to go forth and do whatever it is you do on Sundays.
We're back talking with Mayor Jim Ardis about efforts to curtail local violence. Jim, as you pointed out in your State of the City address, overall violent crime in Peoria is down. Homicides dropped 30% last year. Of course, I believe 2010 was probably our worst year on record for homicides, or close to it. How does Peoria stack up against other cities that have used these programs, including Rockford?
The other cities that have, I'm not aware of anybody, at least locally, that's done Don't Shoot. I think Rockford's done a ceasefire program, which is similar. But the other cities that have successfully used Don't Shoot are cities, a lot of them bigger cities with much more gun violence that we've had, and they've seen significant drops in their gun crimes because of this program. Department of Justice has every reason to believe that you can actually validate the success that they've had there and scale it down to a city Peoria's size with the number of gun crimes that we have and be successful. So we have every reason to believe that that we can meet or exceed the success that they've had in other communities with this.
He points out in the book, again, the book is Don't Shoot by David Kennedy. He points out that in some of the cities, the earliest cities where he took his programs, Boston, Cincinnati, if they didn't keep it up, keep the program running, the violence returned. What can we do to make sure that that doesn't happen? Is that one of the aspects you want to look at?
Well, I think it is. I don't think that when you institute a program like this, and I mean, I'm not the expert on it, they are, but the results they've seen have been consistent. That if you don't continue to pay attention to that element of the community that engages in these type of activities, if you don't continue to emphasize the need that you can't use guns in this city, and we're going to prosecute you to the fullest extent, and so on, that it'll naturally come back. The bad guys aren't just going to pack up and leave forever and say we can't do business in Peoria. I think we'll be successful in getting them out of here for a short period of time, but it doesn't mean that at some point in time they won't be back.
Will your intention to engage the help of the community help keep it away?
I think it will. I think a big part of the success in this is because it's not just a focus by law enforcement. This corresponding side, and they call it the moral conscience of the community, and that's the actual civic side, the people in the neighborhoods and the people in the communities that want their neighborhoods to be safe. There isn't a neighborhood in the city that doesn't want their neighborhood to be safe, that they can go outside and enjoy it no matter where you live in Peoria. And so we really feel as we create a safer overall city, people get back out into their neighborhoods and enjoy how it used to be in many cases. In the old days, they say, when it used to be safe and you could walk outside and not be afraid for your own safety. We really feel like once they get that back in these neighborhoods that they're really having problems with, they're not going to give it up maybe as easily as they did 10 or 20 years ago when it kind of crept in. And so we really feel like the community involvement side of this initiative is going to be just as important as the law enforcement side, because these are the people that are invested there. These are the people that live in those neighborhoods, raise their kids in those neighborhoods.
How many neighborhoods in Peoria would you say people don't feel safe in walking around?
Well, I think that there's general areas that the law enforcement community can identify where we see more of these types of crimes, and they have that information. But there's pockets all over the city that you will have this. It's just more predominant in some areas than others, and we're gonna put a lot of focus on the areas where there's higher concentrations. But this is definitely a model that it's not going to be specific to the north end or the south end or the East Bluff. I mean, you can move this initiative and really encompass all these areas at the same time, as opposed to when the chief did a lot of their saturation initiatives where it was focused on a pretty specific area. This Don't Shoot task force, if you will, is really one that's able to concentrate on the whole city and just encompass gun crimes in general.
Okay, and with police and with the community-based help, it's going to be an issue of tolerance. We will not tolerate this. That message has to be sent out clearly.
Clearly, and it's intolerance. There will be no tolerance for gun crimes in the city of Peoria. And when you have these different branches of law enforcement engaging with the state's attorney's office and the U.S. attorney's office for prosecution, it's not going to be a slap on the wrist when they catch them. And that's the big part of this, is the police are out there doing the hard work. They can't get to the state's attorney or the U.S. attorney's office and have them slap them on the wrist. The state's attorney and the U.S. attorney are engaged, and they will prosecute these heavily.
I don't think there's any question that federal gun laws are tougher than state gun laws. Do the state gun laws need to be toughened?
I think what we have needs to be enforced. We don't need to create more. We need to enforce the ones we have.
Okay. Jim, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you for watching today, and remember you can watch this and previous episodes of The Peorian on our website, thepeorian.com. Tune in next Sunday at 8 a.m. on WHOI TV when we start our look at the finalists for the inaugural The Peorian of the Year Award. Have a good week.
Música